Hi, and welcome back to the Make It Accessible tutorial series. In today's video, we're diving into another very important aspect of digital accessibility, color contrast. We're going to talk about what exactly it is, how it can impact your online content, tools that you can use to test your color contrast, and I'm going to show you some common mistakes made on most websites and other digital content. You may think you have this one figured out, but I promise you'll probably learn at least one thing in this video. So let's jump in. Today's Make It Accessible tutorial series is about color contrast. You're going to learn how to stop making some of the most common color contrast mistakes, and I will give you a hint. It's not just your website we're talking about today. Did you know that approximately 1 in 12 men and 1 in 200 women worldwide have some form of color vision deficiency? And on top of that, there are about 246 million people worldwide that have low vision, meaning they have some type of vision impairment, but they are not completely blind. So what is color contrast? We are talking about the difference between the luminance, which is the brightness between the foreground and the background of colors. It's a measure of how easily text or graphical elements can be seen against their background. Today we're pretty much going to focus on text color contrast. There are slightly different techniques and guidelines when we get into graphics. So today we're primarily going to focus on the text. And you can see here in these two examples, the one here on the top, you can see there's some text overlaying an image, and the text itself is in white, overlaying a woman's face. Spoiler alert, we're going to talk about this technique specifically is a big one that people are failing on their websites for color contrast. And it's sneaky. It's not as simple as many of you may think. This bottom image here, of course, white text on a black background or inverting those colors is, of course, the highest contrast you can get. But not everybody wants a boring black and white website. So you'll see examples throughout here that we don't have to do simply black and white in order to have color contrast and have a beautiful functional website. But this bottom example here, you'll see, yes, the text is in white with a black background, but this page would fail because the button does not have enough color contrast. It's a light green with a white text on it. So that site would fail too. So both of these pages here would fail a color contrast audit for accessibility. So let's kick this off with a quiz. I thought this might be kind of fun for you to test your current knowledge on color contrast. Since most everybody has heard about it, we have 4 examples here. Feel free to pause on this page, jot down which one of these 4 examples, which ones pass color contrast and which ones would fail. And then we'll revisit this at the end of the tutorial to see how many you got right. Why does color contrast matter? Well, sufficient color contrast is essential to readability and usability. Of course, the easier it is to read your content, the easier it is for people to use and interact with it. One scenario I think most every person can relate to is trying to read your phone out in the bright sunshine. Even for people with perfect vision, if that glare hits your phone just right, it's going to be very hard to read. That's just one simple scenario that almost every person can relate to when it comes to color contrast. Aside from those who have vision impairments, they're going to have other obstacles where color contrast is really important. There are, of course, business benefits to having great color contrast within your digital content. Number 1, you will reach a wider audience by improving the accessibility in your digital content, including people with disabilities. Another benefit is SEO. SEO is so important to small business owners, and search engines are increasingly prioritizing accessible websites. By having good color contrast on your website, it can indirectly improve your SEO ranking. Everybody's looking for another way to rank these days with AI and all the algorithms changing all the time. If you can focus on these little accessibility features and within your digital content, it can help improve your rankings. And then, of course, legal compliance. Many countries have laws surrounding accessibility standards, like the ADA in the United States and the EAA over in Europe. They all have requirements that digital content has to be made accessible. This is one step closer to you avoiding any type of legal implications due to an inaccessible website or other digital content. So, speaking of the laws or regulations or guidelines surrounding digital accessibility, what is WCAG? The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, also known as WCAG or WCAG, are the internationally recognized standards for web accessibility. These are worldwide guidelines, which is great because no matter which country you're working with or who your clients are, what country they're in, these are the international guidelines. So they are recognized all over the world, which makes it much easier to produce and kind of regulate. So these guidelines, they provide a set recommendations that help to make all digital content more accessible for people with disabilities. In the WCAG guidelines are different success criteria and different levels of compliance. So for color contrast specifically, there are only 2 levels of compliance. With WCAG, there's level A, level AA, and level AAA. With color contrast, specifically with text color contrast that we're talking about today, you have to achieve a minimum of level AA, and then if you are able and have higher contrast content, you could possibly achieve level AAA. Now, these guidelines apply not only to text, they do apply to icons and buttons and charts and other elements. Any element that conveys meaning needs to have sufficient contrast. For level AA, color contrast, the guidelines for normal text, which would be text up to 16 pt, the color contrast minimum is 4.5 to 1. And then for larger text, which would be 18 pt or larger, or bold text, which has to be 14 pt or larger, the contrast minimum is 3 to 1. Now, what do these numbers mean? You don't really need to worry about it. There's automated tools that I will show you to use in order to check your color contrast. But basically what it means, if you have a color contrast ratio of 3 to 1, 3 is the relative luminance of the lighter color, and 1 would be the luminance of the darker color. So there's a whole mathematical scenario to figure this out. But again, you don't need to worry about that. There's tools that are going to tell you either pass or fail and what your ratio is. Most people will achieve level AA, but if you're an overachiever and you want to go for AAA, I would say color contrast is the easiest place to meet a AAA compliance level. But keep in mind, in order to truly reach a AAA level, all of your content has to meet AAA wherever a AAA is required. Not every guideline or success criteria requires AAA. There's actually only a handful, but they are harder to achieve intentionally. So don't feel bad if you're not meeting the AAA standard. AA is kind of the normal across the board. In color contrast, if you wanted to meet level AAA, then the minimum for normal text, so again, that's up to 16 pt, is a ratio of 7 to 1. You're going to see a much more obvious color contrast in a 7 to 1 ratio. And then for large text, it's the 4.5 to 1. No requirement change for bold text. So for AAA, we're talking just normal text size up to 16 pt, or large text, which would be 18p or bigger. All right, these next 2 slides, this is your chance to maybe take a screenshot and save just for future reference as you're learning and getting this color contrast guideline to become habit for you. This first slide is showing level A examples. For the WCAG, this is success criteria. So at the top, you'll see here WCAG SC. The SC stands for the success criteria, which is 1.4.3, the contrast minimum. So if you're ever interested in digging deep into the WCAG, when you go on to their website, this is a terminology that you would see would be success criteria 1.4.3 is color contrast minimum. And then on the upper right hand corner here, I just made a note so you can remember that the minimum ratio for normal text is 4.5 to 1, the minimum of 3.1 for bold text and for large text. Now the bold text has to be at least 14 pt and the large text needs to be at least 18 pt. So again, this is just a great page of examples to take a screenshot of. You can see here the first column has different examples of pass and fail for normal size text. The minimum column shows bold text, and then the third column shows large text. I use throughout here just a variety of different color combinations because there's obviously like hundreds of thousands of color combinations. There's no way that I could show you every single one and show you if it's compliant or not. But I wanted to take obviously some kind of the trending color combinations that are out right now. This first row, I did keep the color palette the same all the way across. So you could see from normal to bold to large text, just to the plain eye, there's not much of a difference. Like you could not necessarily look at these or find these on a website and be like, yep, that passes, that fails, because the difference is so slight in some of these. For example, the first fail where it says coffee time, the greenish background and the tannish text, that in normal text fails, but that is the exact same color combination, font size that passes for bold text. So you really need to be careful as you're testing the elements on your website that you may pass a bold text scenario, but if you're using a certain color in normal text in your body text, it could fail. And keep in mind, this has nothing to do with the font style. Obviously, there are more readable fonts, and that's for a whole nother lesson. The font style itself does not have to do with this guideline. We're strictly looking at the color contrast of the text compared to the background that it's on. This next slide here, again, just another opportunity for you to take a screenshot and save. This is the level AAA examples, and the success criteria for the WCAG is 1.4.6, contrast enhanced. So again, this is like going above and beyond for needing to comply with color contrast. It's only for normal text or for large text. And you'll see in the examples here that there's obviously more of a stark difference in being compliant or not when it comes to the level AAA. You're going to see much more of a difference here in the pass versus the fail columns because of the 7:1 ratio that needs to be met for normal text. So you can take a look at this and save this for later reference if it's helpful. There are a few exemptions to these color contrast guidelines. One being logo types. Logos are not required to have sufficient color contrast. So if you are panicking that your logo and your whole brand color scheme is not compliant, you don't need to rush out and change everything right now. Your logo specifically does not need to be. So I put a couple examples here, like YouTube's logo, of course, is bold and high contrast. UPS we're all familiar with. This MasterCard logo I specifically wanted to put on here because in testing this, if this white font was over this yellow color, that does not pass. It's not necessary to pass because it's a logo. Another exception is some images with text, some being the keyword there. If you are doing an infographic for an upcoming sale, that would need to have sufficient color contrast. You're going to have words on there that people need to be able to see, your sale, how much off, what's it about. That's important. The two images that I show here, the cafe, you can see the name of the cafe in the image, but that's not really probably why someone's going to use that image. They're going to use it to convey a feeling or an energy. The words in that image don't necessarily matter. The second image is of a person holding a book of Polaroid photos. Maybe this is on a photographer's website as a service that they offer or just a design technique. The words on the book don't matter. Hopefully you understand the difference there, that if there are words in an image that just as simple as like a sale, like I mentioned, an infographic, those would need to have sufficient color contrast. Whereas an image that has other elements and other purpose, it's not required to have sufficient color contrast. Now we're going to get into the fun part. I'm going to show you 3 tools for testing your color contrast. There are dozens of them out there, so if you have one that you like, great. Otherwise, these are just 3 that you can check out. We're going to look at the Color Contrast Analyzer from TPGI. We're going to look at the Color Contrast Checker, and then we're going to also look at the WebAIM Contrast Checker. I picked these 3 specifically because we're going to be looking at an app option, something you can download and have on your desktop and use. We're going to look at an extension, and then we're looking at strictly web-based testing. Let's get into that so you can see how these work. The first tool I want to show you is the Color Contrast Analyzer. If you have been in my circle at all, you've definitely heard me talk about this tool before. It is from TPGI. It is a free app to download on Windows desktop or a Mac, and it is a great tool to check for contrast. I just have it pinned here at my toolbar, so you click it open on the page you want to test. It starts at the top with choosing your foreground color. So you have the hex code here. You can change this if you prefer to work, in RGB or HSL or any of these other color systems. I always keep it in hex because that's kind of what people know the best. It shows your hex code here, which you can easily highlight and copy and paste if you need to. And then here we have some tools, this up and down arrow. So once you select your foreground and your background color, you can hit that and it will just switch them so you can see the contrast for either direction. And then you have some sliders here. If you're comfortable to change the colors you have, you can change these sliders to adjust your color if you want. I don't prefer to use that, but that's there if you want it. And then we have our eyedrop tool, which you've probably seen in Canva, Illustrator, any editing software that you're using. You've probably seen the eyedropper. You have those sections for both foreground and background. And then below that, it will show you a sample of text with the colors that you've chosen. So you can easily see what that might look like in text or an icon. So that's super helpful. And then right below that, we have the WCAG 2.1 results. WCAG is at 2.2, but these color contrast ratios haven't changed since then, so these won't be affected by that. So don't worry about that being 2.1 versus 2.2. But you can see here our success criteria of 1.4.3 for the color contrast minimum level AA. And it will tell you right here if you pass with regular text and if you pass for large text. Now remember, large text, the ratio to pass large text is the same ratio to pass normal bold text. So even though that normal bold text is not listed here, if you're passing the large text, you're going to pass it if it's bold and normal text. And then right below that, the color enhanced level AAA. And it will tell you the same thing whether you have passed regular text or large text. And then we have not gotten into this in this video and we're not going to, but 1.4.11 is non-text contrast level AA. So we're not looking at that today, but that's for another time. But what we want to do, we know here we have some white text and then we have some yellow gold text over a kind of teal color. So we can test, we already have our foreground here set as white. So we will leave that. Let's just use our eyedrop tool to change the selection for our background. So we will test our white to this teal color. As you can see here, it shows us the example of that, same as on the page. And we are passing at all levels for level AA and AAA. But let's change our foreground color from white to this kind of goldy yellow. So we'll take our eyedrop tool and we'll go and we'll click over in the yellow goldy color. and it changes it, and all of our stats here change. We are failing with the regular normal text, but it's passing with large text. So this is obviously large text. This is more than 16 PT. So this passes. So even though you see, oh gosh, you see a fail right away, that is for normal size text. So you don't need to worry about that. This is failing for level AAA if that's something you're looking to achieve, but you are passing level AA for color contrast here. The next tool I want to show you is the color contrast checker. This is a Chrome extension. I believe it also might be available in Firefox. So this is a little different than the last tool I showed you, the color contrast analyzer. Since it is a desktop app, you can use it to test color contrast in anything. It doesn't need to be on the web. You could be testing a Word document. You could be testing an image, whatever you need to test. It doesn't need to be on the web. So that is why I kind of keep that tool in my toolbox. This color contrast checker, it's an extension. So once you download it, you'll have this little icon up at the top, and you can just click that open to get to your tool for anything you're testing on the web. To use this, it provides basically the same information, a little different layout, but you have your foreground color. It shows your hex color. So you can't adjust that to RGB or HSL or the other options like you can in the color contrast analyzer, but it shows the hex code, which most people are familiar with. You have your eyedropper tool. You have your color swatch that you can click into to adjust the color if you want to do that. So it shows that for both your foreground and your background colors. And then again, it will show you your contrast score, and it will tell you if you're passing for normal or large text to level AA and level AAA. And it will also tell you if your graphics are passing that too. And it gives you the sample of your font color over your background. So it works super similar to the other tool. You can either insert your hex code if you know that, or you can click the eyedropper tool, set your foreground color. Ours is white because we have white text again. And then we'll go over and we'll click our eyedropper tool for our background color, and we'll just pick any of our background colors here. Now this, I wanted to show you this example specifically because this is kind of a gradient background, has multiple colors. They kind of fade into each other, so there's multiple shades of each color. What you need to do when you're testing an element like this is you need to actually test the foreground to each of the background colors. And it's best to start with the lightest, because if it's not passing the lightest, where the white text is touching the lightest color, which you could maybe say is this yellow, or this kind of purple and pink really fades out very lightly here. So you'd want to test it to that, because if it's not passing that, then it doesn't pass. So you don't need to test all the other colors, but you just need to be aware when you're doing that, that you need to test the lightest foreground color to the lightest part of the background color. So that's just a tip for you when you're testing. But this tool, as you can see, works very similar. Just clicking the eyedropper tool, and then if you want to adjust your color, you can click open your color swatch and move it around to see where your score is adjusting till you're passing. This last tool I wanted to show you is WebAIM's Contrast Checker. This is an actual website, so it's a little trickier unless you know your hex codes, or if you are just starting out picking your brand colors, this might be a good tool to use, but you'd have to flip back and forth between web pages or your document and this to test. It's not as handy as the other two tools that you can have up on the screen at the same time. There's ways to do it, but obviously it's more convenient to use the other two tools. It is telling you the same type of information. We have our foreground color, we have our hex code, which you can edit as you need to, or you can pick your color palette. So you do that for your foreground and your background. But what I like about this one is if you have your color palette and you really like it, and you just want to quickly adjust, you can use these sliders underneath your color swatches to just slide and see how far do I need to go to adjust this. And you're kind of more, I feel like a little more control over sliding it versus just clicking around in the palette box with the last tool to see where we needed to be. But it shows you your score right below that. So you can quickly and easily adjust this hue and say, oh yeah, I like this kind of darker blue color. So we'll go with that. And that is 13.09 to 1. So that is amazing contrast right there. So I do like to use that tool for that. And then scrolling right down below your score, you can see it tells you the same information, tells you your normal text. Are you passing for level AA and AAA? Yes, you are. How about your large text? Is that passing? Yes. And graphics. And it shows you examples right next to them of each, so you can see how that looks. So this is a great tool if you're just starting to put brand colors together for yourself or for a client. And if you scroll down a bit more, it just kind of tells you how to do it and why we're achieving these levels. And they also have a color contrast link checker. And when we get into links, we'll show you why that tool might be handy. And that tool and all these will be linked in the description below, so you can easily have access to them if you find that they would be useful for you. But I just wanted to show you these 3 quick tools. They're ones I use often when I'm testing or putting brand kits together for people. So yeah, check them out below and let me know if you like them. There are lots of ways that people are failing in color contrast, but in putting this together, I promised you 3 of the most common areas where I find this when I'm doing audits, but I have 4 for you. Let's see if any more pop up by the end of this video, but for sure, there are 4 areas where people are most commonly failing within their digital content. Some of these may be surprising to you, some may not. Number 1 is links. Number 2 is text overlays. I kind of hinted at that at the beginning of this tutorial. Number 3 is in hover effects. And then number 4 in thumbnails. First, taking a look at links. So when we're talking about links, they are generally going to be in a normal text size. So they're generally going to be 16 pt or smaller because they're going to be included in body text. That's not necessarily always the case. So keep in mind, if you're doing it larger than that, you could have different contrast ratios to meet. But we're going to go through normal text and links. So if we're looking at the normal text, we're looking at needing a contrast minimum of 4.5 to 1 in order to pass level AA. Best practice, of course, is to have your links underlined. That has nothing to do with color contrast, but just bonus tip for you. It's best to have them underlined, but style-wise, I know not everybody likes that. So there's other things you need to do there, but that's for another tutorial when we get into just links specifically. And then I'm going to just give you this tip here. We're not going to go into it again because this will be in a later tutorial just specifically about links. But when we're talking about links, today we're doing the color contrast just between the link and its background. There is another standard of the link contrast to the surrounding text. So there's 2 color contrast guidelines to meet with that. But today we're just going to start at the basics and we're going to do the link color to the background. Where do we find links, people? We find them everywhere. We have them on our website. We have them in our blog posts. Sometimes they're in our product description. Emails is a huge one. Social posts, and also in PDFs. If you're sharing PDFs with live links to people, those need to have sufficient color contrast. Well, I did give the disclaimer at the bottom here. There are other guidelines surrounding link accessibility. So don't think, oh, I got my color contrast figured out for my link, I'm good to go. There are other success criteria that we'll go over in other videos. I just wanted to share this with you. I just quickly went through my email this morning and pulled screenshots from emails of companies, that I get promotions from or people that I follow. I just pulled a couple quick ones here to show you people are failing horribly at links in emails. It is a huge pet peeve of mine. I often will email the people that I follow and be like, hey, just so you know, this isn't accessible. But you can see here, it's all over the board. I mean, these light green and pink colors are super hot right now with people, but you're totally missing out on like your people being able to find your stuff and find the things you're selling or, promote. One of these is someone was promoting a podcast that they were showcased on. and the link is not accessible. To the plain eye, to someone with perfect vision, these might be totally fine. And you're thinking, what's the problem? It's totally fine. They are not accessible. So someone with low vision could have a very difficult time reading some of these, maybe not be able to read them at all. But also, like I mentioned at the very beginning, we're also talking about people with color blindness who simply like literally cannot see certain colors. That is to why we also prefer to have links underlined for accessibility. So there's another way to define them and identify them. I just wanted to show you quick here because it's literally, I think, a bigger problem almost in emails because people like to get kind of more friendly or more down to earth or more excited than their website, which they might try to keep more clean, and they may pay attention to these things. Emails are, it's horrible. Emails are failing horribly with links and color contrast. Put it on your list, make it your goal to check your emails. If you're sending things to subscribers, make sure your links have color contrast in your emails. So I just want to show you here, this is just a simple web page. And one common fail point for link contrast is in the navigation. So those are obviously our links at the top of our website showing our different pages or actions that we want people to take. And this is a very common place where fails can happen in color contrast. So this is the home page and the navigation here is fine. And then if we go to the Learn page, you can see this page was designed a little differently. The hero or header background image overflows the header into the first section. So our font colors here have changed. And you can see it's white text now, and that there's obviously not enough color contrast here. So what we would need to do is to just change the text on this page alone. Every platform is different how you do this, so depends on what you have here, but I'm just going to go into my editing tools and paste some code in here. I'm just going to change a couple of these buttons so you can see. Now the text is black on a couple of these, and you can see the login is still white. So you can see the difference here in the contrast, and the black is much easier to see. Again, here the logo changes to white on this particular page, and that is fine because if you remember, logo types, there is no color contrast guideline. So that is fine, but our navigation links do need to be adjusted to a more contrasting color in order to pass. Here is another example of some links. This time this is in the footer, and you can see they have some links here in white for different pages, pricing, FAQs and such. And then their contacts are also links. The email and the phone number. Remember, these are links as well, oftentimes. So these, well, whether it was text or links, they would need to have more contrast. This looks really cool. It's in their brand colors, but it does not pass color contrast. And so you can see it's only just over 2:1 contrast ratio. So even though it looks really cool, it's in their brand color, this would need to be adjusted. So what you'd want to do again, and this is just my particular editor on how I do that, you go into your edit mode and we'd want to highlight the text here. And we're just going to change it to white text. So then there they are still links. And then you can see if we scroll down, the links are still here. They are still links, but now they're white and people can access them easier. And one last example I wanted to show you for links is links in sentences, because oftentimes, especially in blog posts or in emails, you're going to be putting a link to a promo or a video or a resource of some kind that you want people to click on. These examples here, the link is at the beginning here. You can see it's in a different color. It is underlined. Clearly a link. You hover over it, you get the little finger pointer to click on the link. When a link is in a sentence, step one here that we're dealing with today is just the link against its background, and this is obviously a darker teal color against a white. That passes just fine. The second part of testing color contrast with links, and this was noted too, but we're not going deep into today, is to check the link color compared to the surrounding text. And this is important when your link falls into a sentence. So you need to compare your link color to the other text in the sentence. So as you can see, if I click open our color contrast checker here, you can see I have the foreground color as the teal, and then the surrounding text, which is black. And that does pass. It is barely passing at a 3.03 to 1. So that ratio needs to be a 3 to 1 for the link color to the surrounding text color. That is a 3 to 1 ratio. So this does pass. And again, this is step 2. This isn't what we're going into depth here today, but it's just a reminder. So when you're checking your links that fall into paragraphs or sentences, to number 1, check the color of the link compared to its background. And then your bonus tip for today, and we'll go into in a later video, is the link color compared to the text on either side of it. Next, we are talking about text overlays. This is a huge fail point that not a lot of people are realizing. So what we're talking about here is we're talking about generally at the top of a web page. I mean, it could be anywhere on the web page, but generally at the top, maybe someone will have a beautiful image or possibly a video with text laid over on top of it. What we want to do first when we're looking at this is we want to verify the font size. Generally, we're going to be talking about a large or large and bold text here. Very rarely is normal text laid over an image. Possibly it could be, but for today's purposes, we're going to be looking at large text or large and bold. So once you know your font size, then you're going to just remind yourself what contrast ratio you're looking to meet. And then number 3 is you need to confirm your background color. What color on your website is behind that image? So maybe you see where I'm going here, where the fail point comes in. And then, so once you do those 3 things, if you have your background color, you have your image, and then you have your text overlaid, when you're testing it, you need to test the lightest point of your text to the lightest point of the image where it overlays. So let me share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about here. Here we are just on one of my sample web pages, and you can see I have this white text laid over an image of a couple balls of yarn. Now the opacity of the image is adjusted so the text really pops, which is great. What you'd want to do to start is obviously you'd be testing this white font against kind of this middle lighter color yarn. That's the lightest point where they touch. So that's where you'd want to do your contrast test to start. And I've done that and it passes for large text. We're fine there. But when it comes to overlaying text on top of an image, what you need to consider is what is behind that image. By default, every web page starts with a white background, but you have full control over this in your editor, your CSS, wherever you're managing your website styles. There are a multitude of reasons why images may not be loading on a computer. If someone has ADHD or other cognitive challenges, they may have the settings on their computer set so that images don't load because it's just too much for them to take in and focus. I also know a number of developers who choose to not have images load because for their workflow, it's a lot quicker. They don't need to have the images there to do their work, and their computers and processors and whatnot work faster. So there are reasons why people would choose to not have images load for them. And then, of course, we need to consider technology doesn't always work. You might want the images, they might not be loading, or they're super slow. So there's all kinds of reasons why an image like this might not load. Where I run into problems a lot when I'm testing websites for people is what is behind this text? What is their base color? Because that's what we need to know also complies with contrast. So for this instance here, we have our white text box here. And if this image weren't to load, we'll just delete it here quick. You can see we have no text. Because I'm in my editor, you can see the outline box where the text is supposed to be, but you cannot see it. So whether someone's choosing to not have images load or computers just are not working, they can't see what is supposed to be on this page. So how would we correct this? If I scroll down a bit, I have the same image with the text here. And if this image weren't to load, I've simply made sure the background color contrasts with the text. It's that simple of a fix, but it's just something people aren't considering. Even if they are aware of color contrast and they're making sure that their text is popping enough in front of their amazing image or a video that it's laying over, you have to keep in mind what is behind that image or video, because that also matters when you're dealing with accessibility. Now let's discuss hover effects. This too, like the last one, there could be a hover effect of when you hover over an image, maybe different text pops up or changes color or something. More often we're going to see this in buttons. So when you hover over it, it either inverts the color or completely changes the color. So that's what we're talking about here. Again, we're going to start by verifying our font size. This could go honestly either way. I see a lot of normal size text in buttons, and I see larger and often bold text. So we're going to verify the font size first. Then we'll figure out what contrast ratio we're trying to meet. And then we need to test both states of the hover. There's other criteria around making buttons accessible. There is a different contrast ratio of the button background that it needs to meet to its background. But today we're focusing on the text of the button to the button color. Here are some examples of buttons with hover effects. Now, traditionally, as I mentioned, you're generally going to see just an inversion of the initial state for the hover, like this second button here. It has the darker green background with a light text, and if you hover over it, it changes to a white background and the text is now that green color. This would pass for our test of text color contrast. Oftentimes what I see though is when there is a hover effect and you hover over it, the text disappears into the button. Whether this is something people aesthetically like or it's just something that they missed and didn't realize that they did, but this one is a white background with a very, very, very light cream text color. So this would fail. Our first button there, the initial inversion, passed as I mentioned for today's test. The secondary criteria for a button that I mentioned is the button color to its background. So this button here, you can see if I hover over it, it does not pass the text test, the text color contrast, but it now does have a dark outline. So the button to its background, that color contrast ratio would pass. So we want to put it all together. We have our initial state of button, and then we hover over it, and the background changes to white, and the text and the border change to the darker green. So we're passing the text criteria and the color contrast for the button element criteria. And then these last two buttons I just wanted to show you as an example too, because people do like to just try to use their other brand colors, kind of their accent colors, when they're designing their website and content. This one here is using the two darker colors, which there's obviously not a lot of contrast. You can't hardly read those words on that button. So if you want to use two darker colors or, two lighter colors, just make sure that you're doing something similar to this last button where you're starting your initial state with the green background, light text, and if you hover over it, it just changes to a different accent color on the background, but the text color stays the same. Are on the back end of my actual website, and you're getting a little sneak peek at something that I'm working on, are tutorials for digital accessibility broken down by category. But I wanted to show you this because I do currently have a hover effect. I'm not done with this design. I don't know if this is what I will be going with, but I did want to show you that, of course, hover effects aren't just buttons, though these images with text overlaid are technically buttons. If you see, if I hover over them, the hue changes just so slightly. It's actually a super opaque version of my dark burgundy brand color that overlays here. And these almost are all accessible. Take a guess here as I slowly scroll down which one of these backgrounds is not accessible for our color contrast that we're talking about today. I will let you know in a minute. But I wanted to point this out because a lot of times you will see, like, you'll have a full image, like a landscape or something with text overlaid. So there's much more of a contrast issue. And then you hover over and maybe the words change color or get bigger or something. I just wanted to point this out. This is another area where you would need to verify a hover effect for your text color contrast. Sorry, this may not be the best example here, but it's one that came to mind as I was making this. Did you guess which one of these does not pass for our color contrast? It is this background here with the scribbly black lines, because the black lines do go through the black text. So this would not pass color contrast. And it is super awful. It's like those CAPTCHAs. Type in the random letters that are really all deformed. That reminds me of that. I will definitely be changing that background out, but I just wanted to show you that, or this example, so that you, if you do have this effect on your website, if you have a text overlaid over an image like we have talked about, but it has also changes on the hover effect, I did want to remind you to double check that on your website. Lastly, let's just touch quickly on thumbnails. Generally in thumbnails, we're looking at large text, hopefully very big and bold. So we're going to assume we're dealing with large text here. So we're looking to meet a color contrast minimum of 3:1. Let's remember where we see thumbnails often. Obviously in YouTube and podcast art, that's most common area, but they are also often on product pages if you're selling products, and then also in emails, people use them a lot. So those are the most common areas where we're going to find them. I just happened to go into my feed and saw so many thumbnails. Now, obviously they don't all have text, but the ones that have text, there are so many that are like a white font with a pastel background, or black with a dark red. That one you need to be very careful with to make sure it passes. Let's just take a quick look here at one example of poor color contrast and just then quickly how it could be fixed. Okay, so here we just have an example of a thumbnail that I made in Canva. I tried to grab screenshots from YouTube, but there was no way to do it without real poor quality and being able to read the text. So I just threw in together a quick here of a color combination that I do see often, at least in my feed. So we have white text here, some of it on a light bluish background, and then some on a lighter pinky hue. So again, here we're talking thumbnails. So this is large text we're talking about, definitely over 16 pt. So we don't need to worry about that. We have large text. We're trying to meet a 3:1 ratio. We have our color contrast checker open here. We know our foreground is white. Our background, let's just verify we got the right color blue in here. So you can see we have a ratio of 1.61:1. So that does not pass. Let's adjust our blue color first before we move on. So we're going to click here on the blue color. So our palette opens, and then we're just going to maybe slide down about here. We're at a 3.35:1. So this is a passing color. So what I like to do from here is I will grab this hex code then, and then we're going to go into Canva, get our blue color, and we're going to scroll down to our little color palette here to add, and then we just change the hex code here. So now let's open our extension again. Our foreground color is staying at white, so we'll just grab our little pen here, pinky color, and you can see we're at a 1.90:1 ratio. So again, let's click on our palette. You can kind of decide when you're working with your palette where you want to go. There we go. Hex code. We're going to go back to Canva, background color here, and change our hex code. You can see that It's still in the same color family. It certainly would work if those are your brand colors, but in order to be accessible, this is a better choice for a thumbnail like this. Okay, it's time to test our knowledge. Let's get back to that quiz and check and see how you did at the beginning of the video and how you feel now. Here is a quick peek at the quiz again. So if you want, feel free to pause quick and maybe jot down your answers of what you think passes and fails now compared to how you felt at the beginning of the video. Otherwise, let's just jump into the answers. Here are the answers. Number 1, with the red text on the green, is a fail, and that is a normal text size. Number 2 also fails. It is a large bold because it's 32 pt, but that also fails at only a 1.97 to 1 color contrast ratio. And number 3 also fails, large text, at a 50 pt and only a ratio of 2.65 to 1. So that's the closest, but it still does fail. Does number 4 surprise you at all? It is bold text, 14 pt, so absolutely the smallest font size that bold text could be, with a ratio of 3.1 to 1. So it is barely passing an audit. Just by looking at it with the naked eye, would you think that that one would pass? So how did you do? Put down in the comments below how you did and if you were surprised at any of these. Let's wrap this up with just a couple of best practices for color contrast. Obviously, we want to start with compliant palettes. If you're just starting your business and you're just getting your branding all together, that's obviously a great place to start. But if you're up and running, you have a website, you have content out there, use the tools that I showed you today, or find some that you like better that test color contrast and test every combination for your brand colors. There may be combinations that right off the bat work great, and you can see by the eye, but test it to make sure it's compliant. But there may be other combinations that they don't work in certain scenarios. Get your color palette established first. Then once you have that, you're going to want to verify the font size and the style with each color combination. Now, when we talk style, we're simply just talking whether it's bold or not, because that's the only style factor playing into the color contrast guidelines. Test each color combination in each font size and in plain text and bold text. And once you've established all the ones that work for you and the ones you want to use, set up a style guide on the back end of your website so that they're there and you know, I've done these work. I don't have to go back and worry about it. Same thing for if you work in Word or Google Docs or whatever word processing program you use, get templates set up with those font sizes, styles, and colors so that whenever you go to make a new infographic or change your invoices or send an email, like you have those colors already established in an accessible format. And thirdly, check often. Obviously, if you're doing a rebrand, that's a great time. But if you're just redesigning your website, maybe doing different color combinations within your logo that you haven't done before, check them just to make sure that they're still good to go. Because just because it looks good to you doesn't mean that it passes an accessibility test. Be sure to use the tools I showed you and recheck your digital content often. All right, that covers it. That's our first lesson in color contrast. Hopefully you learned some of the sneaky ways that color contrast can impact your online visibility. If you haven't yet, check the description below to download your free monthly content accessibility checklist to get started improving your online presence today. Until next time, go out there and make it more accessible. Bye.